We will have a Q&A session at the end of the webinar. You can fill in your questions in the question box to the right, and we will provide a link with the recording of the webinar to all attendees at the conclusion of the webinar.
Good afternoon. This is Jeff Finkel, and I serve as the President and CEO of the International Economic Development Council. If you could see what's going on in the room where we are here in Washington, D.C., we have a room full of dignitaries from the federal government. I'm going to acknowledge them at this point, but we'll be hearing specifically from a couple of them early on in this session. We are joined by Matt Erskine, who is from the Economic Development Administration, Acting Assistant Secretary, a good friend of IEDC and a former member of IEDC. He will be followed by Ryan Hedgepeth of the Economic Development Administration, who will be doing the substantial part of the presentation. We're also joined by Michael Jackson, who comes from the Office of the Secretary. It is great fun for me to also acknowledge Charlie Barch, who is with the Environmental Protection Agency. Charlie used to be an IEDC employee 3 decades ago. We are also joined by Tom Murray from the Environmental Protection Agency. I am particularly pleased to also acknowledge Sue Helper. The reason that I'm more excited about Sue than any of these other people in the room is she and I share Central Ohio as a place where we both grew up, and she is the chief economist at the U.S. Department of Commerce. I also want to acknowledge Samantha Schasberger and Angie Martinez from the Economic Development Administration, who has been the chief quarterback to help the IEDC staff, Matt Mullen and Asmite, who will be talking, who is running the show for us during this session. So for those of you who are not familiar with IEDC, we're the International Economic Development Council. We are the membership group for practicing economic developers across the United States with an increasing global reach. We work with the Economic Development Administration quite frequently. In fact, if you go back to one of the merger partners which created IEDC, the Council for Urban Economic Development, in 1967, EDA actually helped found the Council for Urban Economic Development. They have been working on issues of manufacturing, and in particular, as we've come out of this, going into this recession and coming out of this recession, EDA has been working more on that issue. We also get great joy at noting that a former Assistant Secretary of EDA, Phil Singerman, is at NIST also working on these issues, and a former board member of IEDC. To extend our reach even further, Sue Helper and I, when we first ever met, was over a phone conversation when she was at a phone webinar when she was at Case Western Reserve working on reshoring issues. So the people at Commerce and the people in this room are terribly committed to working on these issues. We're pleased to be a part of this program today. Matt Mullen, who has put this together from the IEDC point of view, also wanted me to remind everybody that we have a federal forum coming up. So those of you who are interested on issues of national policy, are trying to find resources for your community, should come to our annual federal forum, which will be coming up in mid-March, and our deadline is coming up very quickly. A number of speakers that we will have that will include Mark Doms, Undersecretary of Commerce for Economic Affairs. We've got Anne Marie Mullum from the Associate Administrator for Capital Access, Dan Graves from Treasury, Doug O'Brien, Undersecretary for Rural Development, USDA, Chris Massengill, Federal Co-Chair, the Delta Regional Authority, Vinay Thumalapalli, Executive Director of Select USA. We know that we will have a big shot from EDA, to be determined. It could be the new Assistant Secretary if confirmed, or hopefully it will be Matt Erskine. If not, the Assistant Secretary is confirmed. With that, it is my pleasure to turn this over to my friend, Matt Erskine.
Thank you, and good afternoon. I want to say a special thank you to Jeff Finkel and the IEDC for hosting us today. The IEDC is a terrific partner to EDA, and we are excited to be working with them to advance the Investing in Manufacturing Communities Partnership. I also want to say thank you to everyone who has joined us today for this important webinar. We sincerely appreciate your time and interest. I'm told that this webinar today is one of the most attended webinars that IEDC has done, and we are excited about the level of interest in the IMCP program, and again, appreciate your engagement. So today's session is designed to provide you with important information about the IMCP competition, and we also want to make sure to answer questions that you may have. But first, let me provide some context for the IMCP competition. As I think all of us know, American manufacturing is experiencing a renaissance. And after a period in which we lost too many manufacturing jobs, our businesses have now created more than 500,000 manufacturing jobs in just the past few years. And these are good jobs. Based on the latest Commerce Department data, new hires in manufacturing have a 38% higher earnings than new hires in other sectors, and our latest data show that for every dollar spent in manufacturing, another $1.48, almost $1.50, is added to the economy, which makes it the highest multiplier of any sector. Now, in the years ahead, the United States is primed to attract even more investment in manufacturing that will lead to the creation and retention of more good jobs. Both domestic and foreign companies are increasingly attracted to investing in the U.S. due to many factors: our strength in research and development, continued increases in the productivity of American workers, our world-class colleges and universities, our strong rule of law and intellectual property protection, our reliable supply chains, and new opportunities created by the expansion and reliability of domestic energy resources. As President Obama said in his State of the Union speech, the U.S. is the #1 destination in the world for business investment. And we must not only keep it that way, but seize on the advantages such standing brings. So the Investing in Manufacturing Communities Partnership, or IMCP, is designed to do just that: leverage our competitive position and accelerate advanced manufacturing investment in communities across the country. The IMCP is designed to support your locally supported bottom-up efforts. And I'd also like to note that the IMCP competition is a coordinated multi-agency effort bringing a whole-of-government approach to this critical economic growth objective. Our goal with IMCP is to incentivize, reward, and highlight smart, comprehensive, and integrated economic development planning and capacity building at the local and regional level. In order to be competitive for one of the designated manufacturing community spots, communities must be able to show that they have assembled effective and sustainable partnerships comprised of key local stakeholders, and that they have developed long-term plans that integrate all of the key investments and assets across their industrial ecosystems. Research has shown that communities can create a virtuous cycle by investing in and building strong, interconnected relationships across 6 key areas: workforce and training efforts, supplier networks, research and innovation, infrastructure and site development, export promotion and international investment, and access to capital. As you will hear today, articulating how your community addresses those 6 areas and the integration of them will be essential to this IMCP competition. So in conclusion, the United States currently stands at a critical moment as it relates to jobs, economic growth, innovation, and shared prosperity. we are at a key moment in which the United States has an opportunity to strengthen its leadership in the global economy. President Obama and Secretary of Commerce Pritzker and all of us at EDA and all of our federal partners in this effort are confident in our country's ability to make the most competitive products and provide the most competitive services, and our ability to play on the global stage. To put it simply, we are optimistic about our country's long-term growth. To ensure this, we must build on our assets and build on our nation's storied history as innovators to keep us competitive and to drive economic prosperity and opportunity for all Americans. As Professor Rosabeth Moss-Cantor wrote in her piece, Enriching the Ecosystem in the Harvard Business Review, regions must link leaders across sectors to develop regional strategies and produce scalable models that build on local assets and attract new investment. Ecosystems are inherently local. In each region, multiple actors that share an interest in local quality of life must come together to enrich the ecosystem. Regional strategies work best when they focus on underlying capabilities and the foundational institutions that produce them. Overall, going forward, you have our commitment that this administration, the Department of Commerce and EDA, and our federal partners will continue to help our state, regional, and local partners all across the country thrive in the new economic reality we face today by, number one, collaborating closely to catalyze local plans to drive innovation and create jobs, and number two, help to build the strong partnerships that will strengthen communities and our nation's overall economic competitiveness. EDA is proud to be leading this IMCP competition, and we look forward to working with you. Thank you again for your participation and engagement today, and a special thank you for all of those on the call and for what you do every day to make our communities all across our great country stronger. And now I'd like to turn the program over to Ryan Hedgepeth. Ryan?
Thank you, sir. Definitely want to echo Matt's thanks to IEDC for hosting this, and want to thank all the partners from across the federal government that are here with us today on the phone and working with us to make this work. Just a quick housekeeping reminder before I get into my brief presentation is that you can ask questions at any time during the call, and we will get to Q&A as soon as we can. I'm going to be as brief as possible with the presentation so that we can spend the bulk of our time going through Q&A, which I think most of you are really interested in at this point in the process. When I talk about IMCP to folks around the country, the way I describe it is economic development reform. What we are trying to do at the federal level is break down silos between all the federal agencies that have responsibilities for economic development. What we're asking of communities is to do the same thing. So in other words, trying to get away from the old model of chasing after an industry or a company one at a time and trying to build a virtuous cycle of economic development policy. So to give some more context to where we are with IMCP right now, I need to take a step back and talk about the first phase of IMCP, which took place last year. We awarded, as a federal government, 44 planning grants around the country to support the creation of economic development strategies that recognize a community's comparative advantage as a place to do business. 26 of those came from the Department of Commerce, but also we had great help from our partners at EPA, USDA, and the Small Business Administration. We built up such good momentum for IMCP. We didn't want that momentum to go to waste. So what we decided to do late last year was have a designation competition for up to 12 communities around the country to be designated as a manufacturing community. And while there isn't any new funding associated with this challenge, as we can tell from the great participation on the call and all the calls we've got from around the country, there's a real desire for this kind of silo-busting economic development work. But the 12 communities that will be selected as manufacturing communities do get a couple of very important benefits that I want to highlight briefly. The first is preferential consideration for up to $1.3 billion in existing federal funding from across the federal government. winning communities will receive a federal point of contact to help access federal economic development resources. And third, and very importantly, is the ability of a community to brand themselves both domestically and internationally as a great place to do business. I won't go through all of the specific programs, but I do want to highlight that this is a federal government-wide effort. There are 13 federal agencies that have agreed to be partners in this, ranging from their own programs to technical assistance. We're very excited and think this will be a game changer for economic development policy. As everyone knows by now, this phase of the competition was announced in December of last year by the Secretary at the White House. I do want to make an announcement. We have to officially have it put in the Federal Register, but we are working to extend the application deadline. That has been because we've had such a surprising and overwhelming response to this phase of IMCP. We are looking at up to a 30-day extension. Please check the Federal Register in the coming days when that becomes official. One of the things we find exciting about IMCP is that applicants can define their own boundaries to identify their own partners. Those communities have to have a strong manufacturing base. It needs to be large enough to contain critical elements of a key technology or supply chain, but small enough to collaborate by identified partners. And applicants must demonstrate that their designation will result in measurable improvement in key areas of their manufacturing ecosystem. So I don't want to repeat, but I think it's important to talk about the 6 pillars we're looking for in applications. We're looking for communities to use a methodology which talks about the current capability, the current institutions for improving capability, what the gaps in their strategies are, and what their plan is among the 6 areas that Matt mentioned earlier. That's workforce and training, the supplier network, research and innovation, infrastructure and site development, trade and international investment, and operational improvement and capital access. So before we turn it over to Q&A, I want to mention that one of the really good resources we've tried to develop with all of our partners can be found on our website, which is www.eda.gov. When you go to that page, you will see a section where you can access the IMCP webpage, where we have a full suite of Q&A that we've worked on as a federal community and are adding to as we go, and we'll add on to obviously after this call today. So the last thing I would say is one of the biggest questions we've been asked over and over again is how can a community provide evidence that ranks in the top third in the nation? So let me talk a little bit without getting into too much detail about location quotients and so forth. I want to be clear what the purpose is. The purpose of the top third ranking for communities KTS is to ensure that regions are building on existing strengths and not just starting from scratch. So that's something that's a little bit different for a lot of the partners that we work with at EDA. But please use that resource. Other resources that have been created by our partners include an excellent playbook that was created by EPA that many folks have found very useful, and also our sister bureau, Census, put together a very good data tool, which you can also access on our website. So I will wrap up my presentation and get started with Q&A.
All right, folks, just as a reminder, the questions box is in your dashboard, and you are welcome to type in questions there. And we will begin the Q&A here in just a second. Do we have a first question? Ryan, which are the participating agencies?
Oh, the 13? Sure, I can run through those. I can run through those very briefly. There are 13 agencies total, and I'll just go in order. We have the Department of Agriculture, HUD, the Department of Labor, the Department of Transportation, the Appalachian Regional Commission, the Delta Regional Authority, the Environmental Protection Agency, the National Science Foundation, SBA, of course the Department of Commerce, Department of Defense, Education, and the Department of Energy are all partners in IMCP.
The next question, can the counties in a promise zone also be awarded certification as a manufacturing community?
Yes, they can. This is a separate and unique program, but being involved in one does not preclude you from being involved in the other.
Can you tell us what the EDA IMCP definition of innovation is in the context of regional coordination? Their reference definition.
I don't believe there's a reference definition, but I'd like to point folks back to the Federal Register. We try to do a very deliberate and specific job of laying out what we're looking for in applications in all 6 areas. And I think if you read the Federal Register notice, it gives you a real roadmap to what we're looking for. And again, using the tools from our friends at EPA and Census, I think can be helpful in your application process.
Okay, this is a question regarding the location quotient. The person wants to know if we can use LQs measuring the number of people in a given occupation, or basically anything other than the 4-digit NAICS code provided by EDA.
I'm going to turn it over to Sue Helper in just a moment, but the short answer to that question is yes. We put up the examples of NAICS codes and the location quotient as kind of a helpful tool to help communities develop their strategy, but it's not the only way you can do that. So I'll turn it over to Sue Helper to elaborate.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think in terms of a strength in an occupation, what you'd want to have is some kind of commonality across that occupation that relates to just a manufacturing industry or industries, a key technology or supply chain, and that we're a program of public good investment can help. So I think, I guess I'd just say 2 things. So one is, as Ryan said, I think reading the Federal Register notice to try to be quite clear in that, and second, to echo that the NAICS code tools are intended to be just tools and not they're not required to be used.
Thank you.
Okay, the next question is, our grant application will cover a large geographic area, but a portion will be in a highly distressed set of census tracts. Can we tie our application to the set of tracts and reduce our match requirements?
The short answer to that is no.
So as Ryan was saying, the short answer to that, and a really important point of clarification, is that the IMCP is open to both distressed and non-distressed areas. In terms of this innovative interagency partnership to help foster manufacturing, where one is building on the strength of the manufacturing community. So as you're looking at this, a portion of the area may be highly distressed or not distressed, but this is open to communities of all types across the U.S. And as you will note from this, it talks about the benefits of preferential consideration, but there's no match at this point, as this is not a grant application. This is an application for a special designation as a manufacturing community.
Okay. The next question, if we focus on one of the 6 public good areas for our proposal, are you looking for a complete build-out of the grant that we would include, or that we would use including a budget? So SF 424, staffing plans, and the like.
My understanding is that you do need to, because it's in the Federal Register.
As Ryan was saying, you need to provide some budgetary information so that you can do your cost-benefit analysis. but you don't at this point need to submit an SF-424 because you're not asking for specific federal funds, and you're also not providing at this point any type of matching requirements.
Thank you. And part of the reason that we're asking for you to talk about your matches, because part of what we're looking for is the commitment that a community has that doesn't depend on federal funding. So that's the reason why it's in the Federal Register notice.
Can you talk a little bit about the review process once you receive all the applications and how long you expect that to take?
Yes, right now we're planning on the review process taking up to 1 month, depending on the number of applications that we have. Unlike most EDA programs, that will be done consolidated here in DC by an interagency panel that goes through a two-step process where they're reviewed, scored, ranked by individual members, then reviewed, rescored, or re-ranked by the collective in a more discussion-based format. So they'll be really looked at twice, once very procedurally, based strictly on the point allocations that are laid out in the Federal Register notice, and then again by the entire group to talk through the discrepancies and make sure there's a consistent application of those points and standard applied across. And we would expect them to be fully announced by mid-May at the latest, given a 30-day extension that we're currently working.
Thank you, sir.
The next question, how do you define the KTS?
I'll take a crack at that, sir.
Sure. I think that's up to the community. The goal is something that is, so it could be an existing NAICS code. It could be, motor vehicle parts, NAICS 3363, or it could be a collection of NAICS codes. It could be a supply chain that extends vertically through several. The goal here is to, as Ryan put, I think, very well, show that there's an established base that you're building on, and clearly show how you're going to invest in that future base in a way that gives you spillover benefits across the community in terms of building out your investment in these industries or these key technologies supply chain. So it's really open.
Thank you.
So for the next question, we've seen a few questions that have come in asking about the level of detail that should be provided. A couple of these questions are asking about the level of detail for budgetary analysis, and also about how detailed your strategy documents should be. And really, in terms of thinking about this, it's the level of detail that you think you need to present a strong, persuasive case about how your community responds to the Federal Register notice, how your community has the strength that it is a manufacturing community, so that the interagency group will see your strategy, be able to understand your strategy, and be persuaded by the information that you've provided for this competitive designation of manufacturing community. So we're just skimming through some of the other questions that are coming in. There's a lot of great questions being asked. There's a couple of questions about partners and about identifying partners. There's a section in the Federal Register notice which discusses what is eligible organization, and also talks about the need for agreements and partnerships. And again, this is one of those questions where you need to look at the partnership that is going to help you make the most persuasive case. The partnership that is supporting your efforts as you're trying to advance manufacturing in your area, and the relationships that you have that you're going to be strengthening through the process of becoming a manufacturing community and continuing to work in this area.
what is the current deadline?
Once again, the deadline, we're going to extend, we plan to extend the deadline for up to 30 days. The original deadline, as you all know, is March 14th. So we are looking at approximately April 14th. And again, we would encourage you to check the EDA website for updates and the Federal Register.
So another question has come in which says, is the VLS location quotient calculator sufficient for developing regional location quotient? And I'm going to ask Sue if you could take that question.
Yes, it's sufficient but not necessary.
Could you elaborate a little more just in terms of you know, as people are thinking, I know there have been some questions about whether people have to use one tool.
Right, so they do not have to use this calculator. However, if they do use the calculator, and they do show that they're in the top third in the nation, as we described in the FAQ, then that would be sufficient.
So, Ryan, there's a question that's come in. Are there any restrictions on how large a region can be?
No, we purposely didn't overdefine the idea of region to give communities flexibility. The guidance we give in the Federal Register is generally larger than a city but smaller than a state. So we did that for flexibility for communities around the country to be strategic and define their communities in a way that gave them the best chance to be successful.
If I could add to that, I think if there's a trade-off, that if the area is too small, you may not have very much of a key technology or supply chain located, you know, if you're, say, looking at a single zip code, to take an extreme example. On the other hand, if you're thinking about crossing multiple states, it's not going to be so easy to communicate, to have the kind of intense collaboration that we're looking for. So the best thing is something that hits a sweet spot.
And just to build on that again, I mean, that's really, as you're thinking about your strategy, as you're thinking about your needs as the community, that you're defining that in the way that is going to most improve your area and let you have the economic development that you're looking for in manufacturing. There's another question that has come in asking if we can clarify the preferential consideration, what this means when applying for grant funds. Ryan, did you want to speak to preferential consideration?
This is Mike Jackson from the Office of the Secretary. The short answer is the preferential consideration is dependent on the program you're applying to after the fact. So you have the option of applying to the 18 aligned programs, each of those governed by different either statutory or regulatory limitations of the owning department. And each of those will have a different standard for how they assign preferential treatment. And I don't know if EPA, do you want to give a specific example from your program? Or?
I guess that's exactly it, Mike. I mean, it doesn't change the requirements of the specific agency programs at all. It just what it's doing is it's saying that the participating agencies have agreed to provide some preferential consideration within their existing programs for IMCP designated communities.
And that's one of the things we're watching very closely as we think about adjusting the timeline and how long we take for the review process. Is obviously we want you to be able to apply these points to whatever follow-on grant application you're going to pursue, which we believe will almost all be due with the aligned programs in the June-July timeframe. So if, after being named a manufacturing community, you apply to one of the other 18 programs, I was just looking through the list as an example, if you were going to apply to the Department of Transportation Investment Generating Economic Recovery TIGER program, you could put in your application and they will build in the spot that says, I am a manufacturing community. And then on their review side, they will have a certain amount of preferential weighting that goes to that. But it's up to them to determine that at each agency. based again on the statutory or regulatory guidelines that govern those programs.
Thank you both for that. That was very helpful. Just another housekeeping note before we move forward to more questions is please keep in mind that we're not possibly going to be able to answer all of your questions, but I do want you to understand that we're going to be looking at all the questions that we've been able to answer, the ones we don't get to, and look to build those on our FAQs as we move forward on the EDA website.
So we had another question that came in related to, can you please clarify the matching funds requirement? So just to make sure that that's clear, this is a Federal Register notice that is for that designation, for a competition for the designation as manufacturing community. There is not a matching funds requirement in this Federal Register notice in order to gain the designation of manufacturing community. Now, in terms of building out the strategy and looking at the elements and the types of resources that you have as a community, that's part of your persuasive case. But there is not a matching funds requirement per se, because this is not a grant application. This is not a federal funding opportunity. It is a Federal Register notice so that you can compete for this designation as a manufacturing community, so that you will be able to win that designation.
I just want one quick caveat for, just so we don't mislead anyone. If you look in the Federal Register Notice review process, Part 5B, there is a section that says you will be evaluated on credibility and size of match tied to IMCP funding. And that's 4 points out of the possible 100. So that will not make or break it. It is certainly not a requirement, as it is in some cases, but it can get you 4 out of 100 points.
Right. So to build on Michael, thanks for that clarification. It's part of your competitive strategy in terms of the resources that you had are able to devote, but there's no amount that you have to, there's no percentage amount that is being required in this. Rather, it is something that is going to make that more persuasive case in terms of what you are devoting for your strategy. So there's another one on where can we find local and national data for location quotient analysis. I don't know, Stu, if you wanted to speak a little bit more about resources that are available as people look at that as communities do.
Yeah, I'll give a couple of examples. So the first place to look, and the easiest, is the tool that we've created on the FAQ on the EDA website that walks through in detail, I think, how to use that data. If you're choosing a key technology or supply chain that isn't well captured by the NAICS system, then you can get creative. And there are kinds of things like perhaps directories of trade associations that are set up around your particular key technology or supply chain. You'll need sort of 2 pieces of data, which would be what is the prevalence of your KTS in your the geography that you've chosen, and then how does that compare to that prevalence in the nation as a whole. I can also say that on prevalence, basically we're looking for a persuasive case. We've given you a couple of examples that are sufficient for the use of location quotients, but there's other kinds of cases that you can make about the quantity of activity that goes on in your area that you've chosen. If you can find statements about from external sources that talk about the key role that your community plays in this key KTS, all that can be used, stitched together to build a persuasive case. And to repeat what Ryan said, the goal here is to make sure that what you're really doing is building on existing strengths. And we believe that this is supported by research as the best way to promote your own community, and also to make sure that you're not sort of poaching from others, frankly. And so we really see this as an important tool, an important part of the planning, and not just as a hurdle you have to do for this particular program.
Okay, we have a couple questions about how regions should go about identifying regional clusters. One in particular wants to know if the region should identify their own cluster, or has that already been noted? So maybe we can talk a little bit about identifying the cluster.
I think that's, again, something that the region needs to do. That's a key part of the process, is to figure out where your strengths are. And I guess I maybe repeat what I said. I mean, our goal in this process is that even those communities that don't win are going to benefit. We hope that these plans will, in fact, be useful, and you can build on them in future years, whether you win or not. But we think that this identification of clusters and strengths and areas of potential interaction is really important for a community, and is really the heart of what we're trying to do with this program.
There's also some questions about whether or not folks should address all 6 of the areas and elements in their application, or should they focus on those most relevant to the needs of their industry?
Well, you need to talk about all 6 as part of your overall strategy, but there's no but don't be intimidated if you don't feel your community is strong in all 6. That's the whole point behind this public policy. So yes, you need to speak to all 6 pillars, but part of the methodology again is assessment of your current status, looking at the institutions that can help you improve, where your gaps are, and then what your plans would be, hopefully through being designated as an IMCP community to help strengthen those. I think Mike has a couple points to add as well.
Yeah, I just wanted to make it clear, though, that if you read the Federal Register notice, there are 36 total points available for your quality of analysis that goes into those 6 pillars, and that is distributed 6 per. So if you leave one out completely, you're obviously forfeiting those points. However, as Ryan said, not all of those will require an in-depth plan. If you do the kind of analysis of your current capabilities and what institutions are there and the gaps, say, for workforce and training, and determine that that's not a weak point for your community and does not need to be a focus of your strategic plan and does not need to consume a great deal of your resources, then you can note that, and it can be a short section. It can provide a little bit of the analysis empirically that they ask for, that we ask for in the Federal Register notice, about the schools in the region, about how closely they're tied to the industry in the region, about workforce, existing apprenticeships programs, et cetera, and then kind of what will be lacking in that portion would be the plan, because you may identify we do not need to build a significant plan around this. But if you omit it completely, you are forfeiting the points associated with that pillar.
And just to add, I think, again, the goal here is to break down some of the silos that sometimes exist within communities where the workforce people don't talk to the technology people, for example. And so we'll really be looking for there to actually explicitly point for the integration across these different elements. We really want to see that the community is thinking about, to move this key technology or supply chain forward, what are the gaps, and I think, communities also need to think sort of strategically about what they need to, there is a page limit, and to make sure that you're not kind of blandly scratching the surface, but rather kind of thinking strategically about what it is are the key points that you want to make, what are the key things, the key elements that you want to do, and showing us the integration across the 6 areas.
So there's a question that came in, which is there a designation preference for specific types of manufacturing? And we want to be very clear that there is no preference, that it is up to your community to look at your strengths and your plan and your strategy, and that we will be reviewing those plans and those strategies, but there's no preference for a type of manufacturing. I also thought, just looking at several of the questions that are coming in, that it would be useful just to draw your attention to the Federal Register notice. Has a section, it has 2 sections, I think, which Michael has also been pointing out to us, in terms of really kind of looking at them. I know we've also gotten some questions, is there a template for submitting an application? The Federal Register notice provides specific information on the application submission, where it identifies these various required points of information. Some of them are things just like a point of contact, and others is the assessment of local industrial ecosystem, that implementation strategy description, the implementation strategy partners, performance metrics, the experience of handling federal financial assistance, the geographic scope, and the submitting official. And then the Federal Register notice also provides additional information about various sections such as the proposal narrative requirements and the selection criteria. And it provides various different useful questions that you would want to consider as you look at these areas such as workforce training, or as you're looking at supplier networks. It provides tips on what prospective manufacturing communities would want to consider. So it really is a very useful Federal Register notice in that regard, because it really gives you the information that you need in terms of as you work your way through this to make a persuasive case. These are the types of questions that the interagency team is going to be looking at as they review your application. These are the questions they would have. So those are what you're providing information on. And then in the Federal Register notice, it also provides you with that information in Section 5 about how the various parts of the application are scored, so that overall implementation strategy is scored at 50 points, capacity is at 25, and commitment is at 25, and then it breaks down each of those. So in the setup of this webinar, I believe that there was a link provided also for the Federal Register notice. And if not, as our follow-up, we're also going to make sure that we provide that again to you. But we would just urge you also to really look at in detail at the information that's included in the Federal Register notice.
And I would also, just to echo, that the goal here is not to say that you have no problems. The goal is that we're looking for a kind of honest assessment of where you are, that you have something to build on, but that you have some weaknesses and here's a plan for remedying them. That's the kind of thing that we're going to be looking for.
So there's a question which is, does it help if our region has been awarded DOL grants such as CBJT as evidence of our manufacturing density? I don't know if you have any experience with those.
Yeah, no, I think that would be, well, so I think there's two parts to the question. So one is, does it help if your agency has been awarded DOL grants? And I think the answer is yes. It particularly shows that you have an area, in the workforce, and you have something to build on there. You're likely to have a skilled workforce if you were to, say, add some innovation elements to it or site preparation elements. As evidence of density, I'm thinking, yeah, that could be. I'm seeing how maybe that could be a piece of an argument. I'm not sure that you can use the entire the criteria for developing that. I know that these grants are somewhat different than ours, so I don't think it would be particularly persuasive if that was the sole piece of evidence of manufacturing density, but as an element, sure.
Helpful. And also, I suspect helpful just in terms of showing your capacity in the past to handle federal funds.
Exactly.
So I think, those are the types of things you want to be thinking about too. There was another question that was asked that I think you might be able to help shed light on, which was, what type of data can be used to substantiate our economic competitiveness in each KPS? we are a territory and data is not available on the census website.
So there, I think you might want to look at data, gathering data from the firms and the institutions in your territory. That if you have some big players or even a group of small players, if there's some kind of either national or local trade association, that would be places that you might go for that kind of information.
So another question that's come up is, do the regions that received the planning grants last year have any preferred status in the IMCP competition? The answer to that is no. And conversely, if you weren't a winner of Phase 1 funding, you're welcome to participate in this phase of IMCP.
As a reminder to those listening in on our webinar today, we are recording and we'll send out a link for this webinar at the conclusion of the webinar. We're just scrolling through the questions here. Next question.
So there's a question that came in when presenting the assessment portion. We have struggled with the question if we should include the SWOT table format presented in the Playbook. Should we include the format as a table, as a paragraph? The question is asking for additional information about from the Playbook, the SWOT table format. I don't know, Charlie.
Actually, that would be Tom.
Yeah, this is Tom Murray from EPA. The SWOT tables that you see in the Playbook are there as a tool for you to use. It's a way of taking available data. Many of that data, or much of that data, is linked to the Playbook, but there's no requirement to actually include that table. It's just simply a tool to help communities run through a self-assessment process.
So the next question, sorry, we're scrolling through questions here again. There's a question again about the KTS and the location quotient, and it's something I think that we've also heard, and I'd like to ask Sue to look at this. So the question is a statement that the community is concerned that they may not be able to meet the criteria stated, that their community ranks in the top third of the nation for their key manufacturing technology or supply chain by either location quotient for employment in the KTS or location quotient for firms in the KTS. What would you see as our KTS? Could we make a case for an agricultural supply chain and distribution system, or is there something else that one could make a case for? Now, obviously, one doesn't have the specifics here for this community, and it's really up to the community to be able to look and gauge at its strength. But I was wondering, Sue, if you could shed a little more light just in terms of this area, which I know many people have been struggling with.
Yeah. So I think that it's fine for communities to use some of the key supply chains may, in fact, extend outside of manufacturing. So you can think about a agricultural equipment supply chain that where having local farmers or a local farm association is key to improving the quality of that equipment or particular parts. That would be an example I think would be fine, but you'd want to make sure that the agricultural part is not, overwhelming. It's 99% agriculture, 1% manufacturing. It may be that not every community can, in fact, this may not be the right program for every community. We have a lot of different programs. This one is focused on communities that do have a historic strength in manufacturing.
Okay. So as we're going to have to wrap up soon, we're going to be taking the last question. One of the questions that came in is how important is the reference to SEDS in the application? And I think that also there are a couple of other questions just in terms of should one be tying in other types of strategy documents and referring to other initiatives. Ryan, I don't know if you'd like to handle that. Yes. Okay. So in terms of my starting it off, the SEDS is, of course, your comprehensive economic development strategy, and you would want to look at all of the initiatives that you have going on and be talking about how the strategy you're building is going to link to them and how the various different strategies that you have that are working on economic development will be a part of your manufacturing initiative, how the relevant ones are factors in helping what you're doing and how you're building off of your existing resources so that you're able to continue developing as a manufacturing community. I don't know if there are any other comments before we turn to the closing thoughts. Ryan?
Again, I want to thank everybody for taking the time to be on the call today. It has been unbelievable how much of a response we've got from around the country on this program. And again, I want to reiterate that if we didn't get to every question, we will be working to update our FAQs as we move along. So if we didn't get to your question, you have not been forgotten.
With that, this is Jeff Finkel with IEDC once more. I want to thank our friends from the Department of Commerce and the Environmental Protection Agency who have joined us here in this room today, and the many other agencies that are joining them in this important program. I take away with this a small grin as we kept hearing about a playbook, and it reminds me of the movie that was quite well received a couple years ago, Silver Linings Playbook, with De Niro and Jennifer Lawrence and Bradley Cooper. Not everybody who's on this call today will, if you do submit some type of application, will necessarily win or be designated. But what you will get out of this is a silver lining. And that silver lining is you will understand your manufacturing prowess much better. You will understand your strengths much better, and you will probably get an opportunity to focus on your manufacturing economy in ways that you probably wouldn't have done so before. And so you should think about this as a silver lining, just being a part of the process and going through it. And hopefully many of you will be able to seize upon this and improve your local economy one way or another. So thank you very much, everyone, for being with us, both here in this room and on the phone. And I would remind everybody that we will be sending out a link to the recording of this session as well as the PowerPoint slides and a link to the Federal Register notice. Thank you very much. Goodbye.